Smithfield Town Council come to order on January 4th, 2016 at 6:30 p.m. Madam Clerk.
Lord, assist with thy Holy Spirit, counsel all those who are serving in positions of authority and responsibility.
Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Solly?
Here.
Mr. Zelinski? Mr. Boucher?
Here.
Mr. President, on the agenda, if you don't mind, there are two items, number 6 and number 7, which have to do with ordinance amendments. Asked the town clerk to send an email to the ad hoc committee chairperson. The ad hoc committee did not meet over the holidays, so I'd like to continue those in case there was anybody here in the audience. We can deal with that. I'd like to continue that to February at some point. Is it February? What date do we have in that? What's not too filled up with everything else? What meetings now?
February 8th or February 1st or February 15th?
I see Mr. Johnson's here. What do you think, 15th, Mr. Johnson? Yeah, how about the 15th? Yes. So that's a motion.
I'll second. Motion by Councilman Zawinski, second by Councilman Solly. Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Solly?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Boucher?
Yes. Okay, we'll take item number 3. North Smithfield Town Council sitting as the Board of License Commissioners. Discussion by Council of Board of their action on Victualing license AB Corporation DBA Rhode. Is there any principals here from the company?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Recording, please.
I apologize.
Your businesses at 175 Eddie Dowling Highway?
Yes, sir.
That's the, I guess they call it the Top Square Plaza?
Yes.
See, we have was it the background checks over in order, and sign off by the building inspector and the zoning compliance officer, tax collector office, and the fire marshal.
Department of Health as well.
Did I miss that?
Yeah, well, it's inside.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was looking for the CSA.
Food safe certification to Benjamin. Are you Benjamin? You Benjamin?
Yes, I am. You were on last week.
Okay. So's mine. Not as challenging as yours, though. Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the license for Lotus Fine Thai Cuisine. All the required paperwork has been submitted.
Chair seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Mrs. NATO?
Yes.
Mr. Solly?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Boucher?
Yes. Thank you, sir. We wish you the best in your business.
Thank you, sir.
Discussion by council, vote on action on traffic issues on Providence Pike and Greenville Road and proposed roundabout intersections Route 104 and 5. We will open this for a public hearing. Motion to open.
Sure, I'll make a motion to open this up for public hearing, Mr. President.
Chair seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I'd just like to make a notation, this is a continuance from a town council meeting of October 19th, 2015, at this point now.
Motion by
Just look
Motion duly noted.
Thanks.
Okay, who would you like this? Before we...
I'll grab it.
Presentation first. Questions?
Mr.
President.
President?
Just as a matter of process, does the town council wish to hear the Rhode Department of Transportation's presentation first, maybe from the questions that we generated that have not been generated, or do we wish to just move right into the public hearing?
If we should hear, I think, believe it would be prudent to have the write-out presentation made.
Okay,
So therefore, if there's any other questions,
yeah, I don't believe we need a motion to do that, do we, Solicitor? Okay.
No.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the council. As the councilman was saying, we were in here in October to discuss the roundabout plans that we had.
You can't hear nobody back here.
can that podium be moved closer?
No, it's okay. It can involve.
So we were here in October where we came up with our 30% design. This is kind of the background of things. And I'm not the best size, so I do have to move forward. But in March 2013 is when we had the request come in from the town administrator and the town council to examine the feasibility of putting a roundabout at this intersection. In 2013, the state, November 2013, the State Traffic Commission did a study and subsequently approved the installation of a roundabout at this location. At that time, what happens at DOT is we have a design consultant that when the State Traffic Commission approves certain improvements, we give that to them. They submit ours to start the design, and we start forward with the design. At that point, the consultant goes out, gets all the layout of the land, the streets and so forth, comes up with their design, submits the first submittal back to us is a 30% design, which is where we are at, which is where we're now. We have a 30% design. At that point, we want to, that was 2 years ago, we want to come back before we complete the design and spend a lot of consultant man hours and so forth on the project. We want to get the blessing of the town when they see the conceptual of how it would look. And that's the point that we're at now. We came in October, and they recommended that we come back for a further meeting and hear from the residents as well. So this is just a short presentation on the roundabout itself and how roundabouts are typically, how they help from a traffic safety standpoint. The existing traffic volumes, you can see down here is the schools, the middle school property and the high school property to the side. The traffic volumes are not very heavy at this intersection, with the exception of the AM and PM peaks. We do have, as you can see, there's a heavy volume that make this left in the morning and a heavy volume making this right in the afternoon. So those are your predominant movements through this intersection. Crash data over the 8 years was 11 crashes at this intersection. It's not a high crash rate for this intersection, but what it is when you do have crash, because they are typically angle crashes or turning movement crashes, there are 3 of them resulting in injury, 6 angle crashes. So almost half the crashes are susceptible to correction by installing a roundabout. The benefits of the roundabouts, as I was saying at the last meeting, is the big benefit, in my opinion, is the reduction in vehicle speeds. When you have a four-way intersection with a traffic light, 2 of the approaches have green, 2 of the approaches have red. The people that are on that green approach are going to be going at the speed limit or at their traveling speed, and they're not going to be slowing down. Vice versa, if it goes yellow, then you're in that dilemma zone of do I speed up or do I slow down? And then when it goes green on the other side, those people have the same reactions as well. What a roundabout does is it forces everybody that approaches that intersection to slow down. It's designed such that they cannot get through that intersection at 45 miles an hour. They have to slow down to about 15 to 25 miles per hour, which is a much easier speed to deal with a lot of reactions, whether it be pedestrians or other vehicles that are entering the roundabout. The reduction in the number and severity of crashes has been a point that's been shown by a number of studies that have looked at the benefits of roundabouts and why Federal Highway calls them a proven countermeasure. safety countermeasure to reduce crashes and severity of crashes. It also, by its pure nature of making people slow down, go through the intersection, and not wait for the cycling of the light to go green and red on the even approaches, does end up with a reduction in emissions. If you've ever seen a truck stop at a red light, there's a lot of emissions that get spewed from going from a rest to get going again. On these things, they'll be going a little slower. They won't have that starting from zero, as well as vehicles as well. So they've been shown to be a reduction in vehicle emissions, as well as decrease in fuel consumption. As far as all modes of traffic, it is good for pedestrian and bicycle. They accommodate pedestrian bicycles. First responders, it's typical of a regular intersection where you do have, the people that are blocking the first responders do have to get out of the way. With flashing lights, it's no different than any other intersection, but they'll have to move over and provide room for the emergency vehicle to get by. It provides a high capacity and coupled with low delay. Again, from the nature of people going through in an orderly fashion at a lower speed, you get more capacity, you get less startup time. Similar to what I was saying with a truck. The truck, when you start from zero, you lose those extra seconds that are as you're stopping and trying to get back up to speed. You come in and you go down to 10, 15 miles an hour, you get up to 25, you get a lot more capacity through that intersection. As well as the aesthetics, because it is a circle in the middle of the intersection, you do, the ideal thing is you want something to be there that is an eye catcher. So that as you're approaching it, you know that something's in the middle of the intersection. It's not that you're not going to be going straight. So it does typically, I have some pictures, you'll end up landscaping it, and that's the final design issue as far as what we want to put in the middle of the intersection. A lot of people get a lot of argument over, we had rotaries in the state, we took them all out years and years ago, and now we're looking to put them back. There's a big difference between roundabouts and those old rotaries. Those rotaries were a very big intersection. They didn't require people to slow down, and conversely, that's what ended up leading to issues with them. You get a lot of the high-speed crashes, even inside the rotary, that weren't angle crashes like you get at a regular four-way intersection, but they are nonetheless the benefits of the rotary, the roundabout versus the rotary are it's a lot smaller in size than a rotary, and by that smaller size, as I said, it makes people go 15 to 25. You cannot go through a roundabout at 40 miles an hour successfully staying on the pavement. Whereas in a rotary, and we'll show some example, the next example of how it's just so big. This is a design of Massachusetts, where this is the roundabout, and it's actually inside the middle of an existing rotary. So what happens is, as you're approaching here, you're coming in at these big, wide, sweeping angles, and there's no reason to slow down. Anyone that's been up to Fenway, I'd say 1A, you go through those rotaries, and you do go through at 30, 40 miles an hour, and you're trying to merge with people in the rotary that are going 30, 40 miles an hour. It's a lot more difficult, it's a lot trickier to find a gap, and a lot easier to mistake what you think is a correct gap for a gap that's too small. But the roundabouts, because of the small area that you're in, and going 25 miles an hour, it's much easier to find that gap, and much easier for somebody that's going 25 to react to you getting into the roundabout as well. The reduction, this is the study I was referring to earlier, the National Institute for Highway Safety, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, conducted a study of some areas that had traffic signals or stop control and were converted into roundabouts. And they found that the reduction in crashes was down 39%, the reduction in injury crashes went down 76%, and the reduction in fatal or incapacitating crashes went down 90%. This is the data that's out there that Federal Highway is looking at, that they sent it to the states and recommend this is a proven countermeasure. If you have instances, it's a good thing to consider. Reduction in vehicle speed, there was a study, vehicle emissions and fuel consumption. there was a study as well that looked into that and found that the emissions were reduced by 32% to 42% for different types of emissions. There was a discussion regarding pedestrian use. It's right outside the middle school and high school, and Federal Highway also produced this brochure explaining the benefits of having that for pedestrian use. Again, if you look up here, it's a little small, obviously, but the actual number of conflict points between a pedestrian and a vehicle is plentiful at a four-way intersection and a lot less so at a roundabout. So less conflict points typically leads to less pedestrian crashes. The other benefit is the actual speed at which you're going through the roundabout. It's much easier to react to a pedestrian in your path when you're going 15 to 25 miles per hour than if you're going down the road at 40 miles per hour. You're a lot easier to stop your vehicle, as well as the instance of it's a lot easier in your mind to recognize the pedestrian and just think that, all right, I'm going to stop, I'm only going 15, 20 miles an hour. Whereas when you're going 40, to slow down to 0, it's sometimes an inconvenience that the numbers won't take into account. So the pedestrians issue with the roundabout is it's really a benefit of the key benefit being that it intentionally slows people down. And as I mentioned earlier, the Federal Highway also looked at a brochure for roundabouts and how they relate to first responders. Again, the communities that had them cited that they didn't really notice a time in reduction in times to get to the emergency. And then lastly, just to talk about a couple of the roundabouts that are actually existing in Rhode Island. The first one we started out was in Smithfield, Providence. It's right outside Town Hall. This is Town Hall over here. It's a roundabout. It's the first one that we put in Rhode Island. It works well. It wasn't an area that was a high issue with congestion, so it really lended itself to work well. And then if you look at the next one, this is the one that really shows how well these roundabouts work. This is outside of Twin River Casino. This was a 2-lane roundabout. It looks confusing, because you got a lot of different lanes that can go in different directions. But when you're in it, the pavement markings do guide you to where you're trying to go. If you know you're taking a left, and these are 2-lane roundabouts, you get in the left lane, you end up in Twin River, and it works well. We don't have a lot of crashes at these locations, and the crashes that you do get tend to be fender benders, not your serious injuries that you would have with roadside collisions. This is another good one that we want to mention because it's right outside an elementary school in West Warwick, and the same thing, like the pedestrian issue here, if you can see, the crosswalks are a little beyond. They have a crossing guard at this one, but no crossing guard at that crosswalk there. And in speaking with the police chief there, they haven't had any issues regarding the roundabout with pedestrians. And this is in Davisville, part of Quonset Point. And lastly is the Appomattox Circulator in Warwick, where we're putting 5 of these in, getting rid of traffic signals. This will be a very good example as well as far as the reduction in congestion. If you've ever gone through Appomattox during the peaks, it's very congested, and in part due to the traffic lights. It's just the traffic lights are a lot less efficient than roundabouts. So it's under construction right now. And this is the one that we're talking about here today. It's roundabout here again. The south side here, southeast side is the middle school. So, Mr. President, I'm not sure if you want me to stay up here to answer questions or how you want to.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
In October 2015, we had asked if you had spoken to the police chief and fire chief on this.
Yep.
And what was their input?
We did have a meeting with them. I think they were both they're of the opinion, there's not a lot of crashes here, which we were saying in October as well. So it's not a high crash location, but I don't think they were opposed to it as well as being, so they're kind of in the middle. They can see where we're coming from, but as far as a high crash location, they didn't see it as a high crash location.
Also, as well as the fire department, they didn't have any problem with that either?
No, there was the deputy chief was there, the fire department. They're both of the same opinion.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Steve Purcell.
Can I call you Steve?
Yeah, sure.
Hi, Steve. You showed a slide of the Lincoln Roundabout. I don't know which number it was. I couldn't read it. Can you get back to the Lincoln
Sure.
Roundabout? So, am I seeing delineated crosswalks there?
These are the crosswalks right here, yeah.
Yeah. Do they have any other traffic mitigation? Are there any, what's the signage leading up? Is there telling you that there's a rotary approaching?
There is. If you, actually, one of the pamphlets that we had from Federal Highway, it shows it's actually a diamond with a circle with three.
Yeah,
okay.
I see it here.
Yeah, that's the sign that we put on all approaches. And typically we'll put the advisory speed underneath as well to alert people that you can't go through at 45 miles an hour, even though the speed limit up and down the road might be 40 miles an hour.
I believe back on October 19th, I posed this same question to you. Because you were 30% design. Yeah. Does Rhode, excuse me if I say you, it's not you personally,
No.
did Rhode plan on having delineated sidewalks over this proposed roundabout? I believe the answer was you didn't know at that time. You started talking stations and distances and things. Are there any proposed crosswalks for our students to navigate the roundabout?
Within the roundabout?
Well, not within the roundabout, or, either prior to or through.
Yep.
Can you explain the pedestrian traffic safety? Because one of the things you said, it's easier to respond to a pedestrian in a roundabout. I don't want any of our kids in a roundabout walking in a big circle. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
So how can RIDOT propose some type of mitigation?
Well, as I said, the roundabout itself is kind of mitigation because it slows people down. So as you approach, so if you're crossing from, let's say, the middle school and you're trying to get to this side, so you cross here. Now the cars that are coming that you have to deal with to find a gap in are going 20 to 25 miles an hour around this area right here, or coming up here and coming out of the yield at a low speed. So it's the traffic calming of the roundabout. But you're right. There's no silver bullet that will stop a car if the driver makes a mistake. Which is the same in a traffic signal. When someone runs a red light, there's nothing that will stop that car from hitting a pedestrian. But the safety increase is due to the nature of the roundabout slowing vehicles down. And then it's still, the pedestrian as well as the driver still have to take accountability to cross when it's safe and recognize that if someone's crossing, that they have to yield to that pedestrian in the crosswalk.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say there's walking paths too. I know you said how would they get around it? They wouldn't walk in the hours,
Right.
he's highlighting
So-
right there. Those are like little pieces of sidewalk connecting the crosswalks from one to the other. So
They
they're
wouldn't
not
be on the
actually
pavement.
inside, they're on the outside.
Okay, I was just going to the statement that was made easy to respond to pedestrian in the roundabout, and that kind of.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I should say, right, you're right, not in the roundabout itself, but to get across the roundabout.
Okay, so are there proposed crosswalks there now, is that what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's one on all four approaches, and what you have is, these are splitter islands, which just split the two directions of traffic, so a pedestrian only has to look in this direction to see cars until they get to the middle here, and then they stop in the median island, and then they look right. So each time they're crossing, they only have to look in one direction to find a gap. You cross the regular, now if they cross up here, let's say, now they have to find a gap in northbound and southbound traffic at the same time. When you cross in a roundabout, you're only looking in one direction until you get to the refuge island, the median in the middle, and then you're looking only in one direction to continue your crossing.
further question, I know you're 30%, but an increase in impervious material is planned over there? You're going to put more blacktop over there?
In the,
And we now currently have a four-way intersection. With this
Yeah.
roundabout, will you be increasing the impervious material?
Jill, do we have the number on?
I don't have the number yet, because it's only at 30%,
Right.
But it might be a little bit, but not much, because we compensate for it with the center island being landscaped. So although we're adding pavement maybe on the outer edges where there's grass now, we're putting grass in pavement now, you know what I mean? So overall, I don't have the net increase or decrease, but I don't think it's much.
So, Jill, if I may direct this to Jill, the question. If you're heading northbound, you can see, which wasn't on our original look, I think it was October 19th. There's a stormwater section there, can you see that?
Yep.
Is that currently there now, or is that gonna be proposed to be able to
No,
handle the runoff?
It's just proposed,
Okay.
and it has to do with our new stormwater regulations with DEM. I believe anytime you,
Yeah, so when you do increase the pavement, you have to deal with the extra runoff. So,
and even
again,
if
so
you
it's,
just expose a roadable surface, not even if we weren't increasing it, if you just expose, a certain area of your roadable surface, you have to go through this, stormwater treatment.
Can either of you two answer a question for me? When the snow, this was somebody else's, there was another councilman's question regarding snow removal. Did one of the councilmen want to address that? Was it?
That was mine, but who's got it?
Yeah. So, state roads, the state plow trucks are gonna come through there, and Windrow's gonna push, it's gonna be pushed probably onto those walking paths for the students. How safe is that? Is that safe?
but it's comparable to existing. So right now, we plow the road, and if the sidewalks are covered with snow, they get covered with snow as well. It's not a big change from how the snow, from ride-out snow removal practices. I'm not sure if the school department has someone come out and shovel those sidewalks, that we push the snow onto or not. But it won't be, our approach of plowing it won't be any different for this than it would be for a four-way intersection.
You mentioned the crossing at West Warwick, and I guess maybe there's a higher student pedestrian traffic over there, and they have to hire a crossing guard.
Right. Well, it's an elementary school, yeah.
Yeah, okay, just something for us to keep in mind. I don't know how many kids, I'm gonna call them kids, I don't know how many of our students walk to school over there, but they'll be coming into that area, so that's gonna be a concern of the town, maintenance of the crossing guards and that type of stuff, if this moves forward. Thank you, Mr. President, thank you.
Not to speak for Councilman Zalinski, but what I was thinking with the plowing was the windrow's gonna go to the right, either the southbound side, northbound side, depending on which way they're plowing. My concern is DOT keeps speaking of the center islands being the stopgap for the student crossing the street. He can stop there and wait, look at the next spot, and then crossing it. If those aren't removed with snow either, now he has to walk around those as well, or through them, which makes it more unsafe than it currently is. Right now, yeah, there could be a safety issue if we're not shoveling out to where the crosswalks are today,
Right.
but he's got a clear path across the street. Now, he doesn't have a clear path, or she doesn't have a clear path across the street anymore.
Yes.
So now does the town have to maintain those crossings for the students to get across the roundabout at that case?
But those are great questions. Snow removal is a tricky situation. Because right now, like if you go out there, we have our traffic signal has 4 poles, one on each corner, and that's where the ped buttons are. But those are about 10 feet off the edge of pavement. So if nobody is clearing those now, which I know the state's not, so if the town's not doing it, the ped can't get out to the button to control the traffic signal under existing conditions. So you're right. There's a snow maintenance problem under either scenario for pedestrian safety.
Two individuals who signed up for this, Meredith Nana.
Mr.
I just have a
President,
question.
Mr. President,
Just have a question.
hang on, Tony, one second. Mr. President, maybe some people are not familiar with the system of signing up or the process, so if we could entertain those folks as well, would be you know, maybe this is the first council meeting you showed up to. So, yeah, I'm just saying, yeah, taking an order, then if anybody else, I would certainly want to hear what they have to say.
Well, I'll just take the two that signed up and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, sounds good, Mr. President, thank you.
All right, Meredith Nato?
Meredith Nato, 29 Homestead Avenue. I'm here tonight as chair of the school committee. Because of the proximity of the roundabout to both the middle and the high school, the school committee, the superintendent, and the administrators have some concerns about student safety. We wrote a letter this afternoon to the town council. I've brought copies for all of you tonight, and I'd just like to read you the letter which expresses our concerns. On Tuesday, December 29th, the superintendent was provided with documentation, a conceptual layout, etc., and a contact name of Mrs. Jill Nascimento, senior civil engineer at the Rhode Island Department of Transportation. The superintendent, along with Principal McGee, conducted a conference call on December 30th with Mrs. Nascimento. She was most helpful in discussing the following. First question, the students' safety, where and how would they cross? Based upon the conceptual layout, the superintendent asked for consideration that the crosswalks be moved as far back from the roundabout, maximum allowable distance, as possible in order to provide as much advance notice to drivers coming out of the roundabout to notice pedestrians in any crosswalk. Mrs. Nascimento will speak to the lead person on this. Second question, have the dimensions of the roundabout been considered for the sizes of the school buses, 74 passengers or larger, etc.? The answer was yes. Third question, the bus entrance for the high school, middle school arrival pickup area, will the flow of the traffic from the roundabout and the distance from the roundabout to the bus entrance exit be sufficient to allow the buses to exit, take a left turn out or right turn in without facing a steady stream of traffic? The answer was yes, that was considered and factored in. Question, what precipitated the change? Answer, extensive issues with the traffic lights and light loop detectors, volume of traffic, a traffic study that reflected a volume that would be somewhat ideal for a roundabout, the fact that it would slow traffic down approaching the roundabout, etc. Again, the above is a short summary of the conversation. After receiving input from other administrators and the athletic director, it is apparent that the school district has quite a few athletes that traverse that intersection after school. We request that the dynamic as to just how that would occur for our athletes to cross two lanes with no traffic light and perhaps get caught in the middle of the two lanes be reviewed. We would suggest at this time that the district collect data as to the number of walkers from both schools and the sports teams who potentially would be traversing the roundabout and how that might happen safely without a crosswalk light. The district also requests that Rhode offer locations of similar roundabouts so school personnel could visit and view firsthand. I will let them know that there's actually one in the elementary school. Thank you.
John Colano? Actually, Dennis Colano?
My name is Dennis Filato, and I reside on Providence Pike in North Smithfield. I'm here tonight in opposition to the proposed roundabout project at Providence Pike and Greenville Road. As a taxpayer and a resident of North Smithfield for over 20 years, who lives less than a half a mile away from the intersection, I had to speak up. On Thursday, October 29, 2015, I did have the opportunity to speak to Mr. Prostawa of RIDOT, who presented the state's proposal to all of you back on October 19th for the roundabout project at Providence Pike and Greenville Roads. It was my understanding after speaking with Mr. Prostawa that the state is proposing this to be constructed to slow down the traffic through the intersection as well as to alleviate the traffic back up on Providence Pike heading northbound. Currently, the road is not designed for what people are trying to do. The road is not wide enough to have two cars side by side at the intersection on Providence Pike heading northbound. If the first person parked at the stop bar does not hug the center double yellow lines at the intersection, there is no way that a car can pass them on the right unless they drive into the shoulder or gutter of the road. Motorists are now doing that without stopping at the red light, and they just don't care. From observing the problem for the past 2 years, in my opinion, even if this roundabout were to come to fruition, the traffic is still going to back up on Providence Pike due to the width of the road at the intersection. What I suggested to Mr. Prostawa was an alternative, and that was to consider installing 2 turn lanes instead of a roundabout. The first one being on Greenville Road, heading westbound, to turn left onto Providence Pike, heading towards Smithfield. And the second one on Providence Pike, heading northbound to take a right onto Greenville Road, heading towards Woonsocket. I'm quite certain that this will alleviate a greater part of the problem, but more importantly, this will appease the majority of the residents who live in the area. If the commuters from Fidelity do not like the outcome of the turn lanes, well, who cares, because it is our town, not theirs. These commuters from Fidelity are not the ones who live in this town, spend money in this town, or pay taxes to this town. We are. Constructing the 2 turn lanes would be cheaper and would not take away from the aesthetics or from the landscape of the area. This is a rural area, and most people want to keep it that way. We do not want our town to become another Route 44, another Middle Spring Avenue, or another Bald Hill Road. Monday through Friday, the traffic does back up past the entrance of the middle school driveway on Providence Pike in a northbound lane between the hours of 4 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. due to the employees from Fidelity leaving work to go home. They are using Providence Pike and Greenville Road as a shortcut to get to Route 146 northbound. This nightmare has gotten worse over the past 2 years due to Fidelity locating all their offices from Mass to their corporate offices now in Smithfield. Let me now bring to your attention a problem in the making concerning traffic. On Friday, December 4th, 2015, I sat at the beginning of Grange Road at Providence Pike from 4:15 to 5:15. There were 11 vehicles with mass plates that passed me driving northbound, entering Grange Road, heading towards Greenville Road. It was simply a matter of time before these motorists would find this shortcut to bypass the traffic fiasco at the intersection to avoid the light and the traffic backup. I would suggest and advise that signs be designed, manufactured, and erected at the entrance of Grange Road stating that this is a no-through-way and local traffic only on the Providence Pike side, because this is going to create headaches for the people that currently live on Grange Road now. Grange Road should not be used as a throughway for those who work at Fidelity. If any of you recall, the very same thing happened in 2011 when the motorists from Fidelity were using Brayton Road in Smithfield as a shortcut to get onto Route 7 in order to beat the traffic light at the intersection at the end of Branch Pike and Route 7. As a result, a do not enter sign between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. on Monday through Friday was erected, and it's still there, to alleviate the problem, as well as a police officer was posted on Brayton Road during those hours to issue tickets to violators. If you go back a few years even further, back in 2006, the very same problem occurred at Old Great Road in Lincoln, onto Old Smithfield Road in North Smithfield, which is the road before Majestic Motors in Lincoln. Motorists driving on Route 146 northbound were using Old Great Road to get to Sales Hill Road in order to avoid the light at Sales Hill Road and Route 146. The results came to be that Old Great Road became an exit-only road onto Route 146 northbound and no longer an entrance to get onto the Old Great Road heading northbound. At this point in time, the Public Safety Director needs to be proactive now before this problem gets out of control. Because if something is not done soon, complaints will start coming in from the taxpayers who live on Grange Road. While having to contend with Grange Road becoming a main thoroughfare for the motorists of Fidelity to use on a daily basis. In the mornings, the drivers from Fidelity are furious before they even get to the intersection of Providence Pike and Greenville Road. Take note now. They drive down Route 146 southbound and get off at the Woonsocket Route 104 exit. They bear right. Then they travel less than a mile, then all hell breaks loose with the traffic headaches. They have to contend with the students turning up Grange Road to park their cars. Then 100 feet further, they have to contend with the teachers pulling into the parking lot and the parents who are dropping off their kids. Then 100 foot further, they have to contend with the school buses pulling in and out of their lot. Then lastly, they have to stop at the light at the intersection to turn left onto Providence Pike to get to work. Once they do reach Providence Pike, heading southbound, they're so aggravated due to having to stop and go, they're having to contend with all the school traffic. So all they do is just put the pedal to the metal and disregard the posted speed limits of 30 miles an hour and 40 miles an hour. I feel that removing the traffic device and installing a roundabout at the intersection will create a far greater problem as well as the cause of many future accidents. it was stated that yield signs would be installed in the roundabout. But as you know, people cannot abide with the speed limit signs on Providence Pike and Greenville Road, so who's to say they're going to abide with the laws of a yield sign? The Federal Highway Administration states that when a motorist driving through a modern roundabout, they must slow down and yield the right of way. That is what they say on paper. But is the Federal Highway Administration going to enforce these motorists to do this, or is the state DOT? Because our police department, with only 2 cruisers on the road each day during all shifts, does not have the manpower to do so. It's just a matter of time that these motorists in the mornings and at night are going to use their vehicles as dodgem cars because they are all in a hurry to go nowhere. Simply said, they're all going to do as they wish. I'm just curious, if this roundabout were to be approved and agreed upon by the town council and the residents of the town of North Smithfield, Mr. Prestawa failed to turn around and inform you of a law that goes along with one of these roundabouts. And it's Rhode Island General Law 31-15-10. Little that people know in this room, the state DOT did not inform you of this law. It clearly states that when a vehicle passing around a rotary traffic island or roundabout, vehicles shall be driven only to the right of the island. So who is now going to enforce this law? Is it going to be the state DOT? Is it going to be the Federal Highway Administration? Or is it going to be our police department, who is short-staffed? On November 4th, 2015, at 12:30 p.m., I met with 2 police officers and inquired whether or not speeding was an issue at the intersection at Route 104 and Route 5, and they both said no. In fact, they both told me that this intersection was one of the least accident-prone intersections in the town of North Smithfield. In the Valley Breeze article, and I've got all the articles here that I'm referring to, if anybody wants to see. In the Valley Breeze article, in the July 7, 2013 edition, it was stated by the US DOT that by converting from a signalized intersection to a roundabout, a location can experience a 78% reduction in severe crashes and 48% reduction in overall crashes. This is all well fine and good. However, this is not an intersection that is known for its accidents in the town of North Smithfield. Since the public safety director is so concerned about accidents at this location, I am now requesting that the town council demand from her that she now produces incident and accident reports records from the police department within 5 days and furnish me with a copy of this information as to how many accidents has actually occurred in the intersection within the past 10 years from the North Smithfield Police Department and the reasons for their occurrence. I'm quite certain that $1.4 million cost to construct this roundabout are either grant monies or monies from the Federal Highway Administration. But why is the state DOT so adamant about shoving this down our throats when they could do something totally different at a lower cost, which would make more sense, which I am sure would be agreeable to most of the people who reside in the area? If ever there was a time for a roundabout to be proposed to this town by the state DOT or requested by the public safety director, it should have been shortly after November 3rd, 2010, when the 13-year-old son of a very well-known family in this town was taken from his parents as a result of a traffic motor vehicle accident at a very busy intersection less than a quarter mile from his home. Since the Federal Highway Administration and the state DOT states roundabout lessens the chances of accidents, I would have thought that this tragedy after this tragedy, the state, instead of doing a Band-Aid repair by only installing new signage and restriping all approaches with 2 lanes in order to designate the movements at each lane, as well as change the pedestrian walk times in the crosswalks, that this would have been the time and the place to propose and install a roundabout. Let's face it, this is a location where a roundabout would have been warranted and not now at the Providence Pike Greenville Road location for the sake of pleasing people from Fidelity. I'm just curious to know, somebody from the state, from the town was paid off by Fidelity to advocate for this roundabout. I've been living a half a mile away from this intersection for over 20 years. and no one ever mentioned the fact that a roundabout was needed. Before the state DOT commits to doing a project of this magnitude, only to please the employees and motorists of Fidelity for 1 hour a day, or perhaps they should do something to please those who live in the town, like fix the Stone Arch Bridge, or fix the parapet walls on the railroad bridge on Great Road opposite Lafferty Road, and get rid of the crumbling Jersey barriers, or perhaps repave Greenville Road from Providence Pike to Route 7. The money would be better spent on those projects and appreciated by the taxpayers of the town, more so than a roundabout being constructed that we do not want in our town. It's apparent to most of us here tonight that if this project were to be approved and come to fruition, it will only please the people from Fidelity and not the people of North Smithfield. If any of you do decide that you're going to vote in favor of this roundabout, let me just say that you'll all be signing your own death warrants, because it will be like committing political suicide next November when it comes time for re-election. In a Valley Breeze article dated July 17, 2013, the town administrator talks out of both sides of her mouth. She admitted...
I'm sorry, Mr. President, may I just say that I don't believe this is on the agenda?
To the Rotary.
Does it relate to this Rotary or something that happened years ago? That would be a difference.
Comment should be directed to this Rotary, obviously.
Pardon?
Comment should be directed for the purpose of the public hearing.
Is dealing with the Greenville Road and the Rotary?
Yes, it does.
Proceed.
Thank you. In a Valley Breeze article dated July 17, 2013, the town administrator talks out of both sides of her mouth. She admitted, and I quote, "With the exception of the repairs needed for the signal, the intersection has not been a problem at all." She goes on to say, and I quote, "Although we don't necessarily have a safety issue at this location, we are taking a proactive approach by reducing the potential for crashes," she said. She continues to state, and I quote, "It slows people down since motorists must reduce their speed to 20 to 25 miles per hour to go through the roundabout. Well, I'd like to see the public safety director make a right-hand turn from Providence Pike onto Greenville Road doing 25 miles an hour in her Ford Focus." Public safety director goes on to say that this is ideal since it is close to the schools and Route 5 currently has a speed limit of 40 miles per hour. Just one thing, Ms. Hamilton, people aren't doing 40 miles an hour, because if you would have thoroughly read the traffic study report, which is coming up in my next segment, you would have seen that the motorists are doing close to 50 miles an hour. She continues to say that the posted speed limit on Providence Pike is posted at 30 miles per hour and 40 miles per hour. However, that does not mean that the motorists drive at those designated posted speed limits. Traffic study clearly will identify the results and determine that there is a severe problem with enforcement of the laws on behalf of the town administrator and public safety director of this town. Just to let you know, earlier this year, repairs to the intersection were completed by the state DOT by installing new actuator loops throughout the entire intersection in all the northbound, southbound, westbound, and eastbound directional lanes, and the light works perfectly now. In addition, all new crosswalks and stop bars were repainted on the newly paved roadway. In the same article, the town administrator states, and I quote, "However, says such improvements like a roundabout can save both the town and motorists money, while even helping to protect the environment." I have to ask, how is this roundabout going to save the town money? Travelers, she said, save time as well as money by not wasting gas at a red light. Since when is she so concerned about motorists wasting gas at a red light? She continues to say that the change is also considered good from the environmental perspective by stating that traffic continuously moves through a roundabout so less emissions are released into the atmosphere. I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but all the town administrative statements that I just read concerning environmental and emissions issues are the exact same words, verbatim, that the Federal Highway Administration has posted on their website. Am I wrong to assume that this is called plagiarism on behalf of the town administrator? I'm a little bit perplexed because I didn't realize that the town administrator was so well versed or educated.
This has nothing to do with the roundabout.
Mr. Pilato, can you please keep your comments directed towards the Rotary or the Roundabout, please?
It's a public safety issue, am I correct, Mr. President?
Yes, but the hearing's based on the Roundabout. You're correct.
All right, in a Woonsocket Call article on November 7, 2015, it was stated by Charles St. Martin, spokesman for the RIDOT, that the roundabout isn't the state's idea at all, but it was at the request of the town administrator, which took place back in March of 2013. My question is this: don't we, the taxpayers, have a say-so as to whether or not we want this roundabout in our town? I find it disheartening that the town administrator is so willing to call upon the state DOT to install a roundabout, but when it comes to her work in her capacity of the public safety director, she turns her back on the people that she represents pertaining to the enforcement.
Mr. President, I do think now we're getting way afield of the roundabout. I think comments either have to be for or against the roundabout, not about people who support it.
Mr. President, it's like, it's my understanding this is public safety as well. The way it was put on the agenda, it was classified as public safety as well. Am I correct?
Public hearing, yes.
It says, it's a discussion by council, vote or other action on traffic issues on Providence, Pike, and Greenville Road, and the proposed roundabout, sections of Route 104 and 5. That's how it's detailed in the agenda.
Comments should be related to that.
Comments should be dealing with traffic issues and the proposed roundabout.
How about the other issue that I spoke to you about?
Well, the other issue is this is what's on the council agenda. There is no other, as far as the other, anything else?
I mean, Mr. President, Mr. Flalo, you mentioned earlier in your, so you said you had a traffic study that.
That's correct, and that's what I wanted to get to
Can we
next.
get to that? Do you mind, Mr. President?
Sure.
Ask Mr. Flalo to get to that point.
In early October of 2015, I recently had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Soley. I informed him that in 2011, a traffic study was performed by the State Traffic Commission of the State DOT. Since this was a public town document, I instructed him to request a copy of the traffic study from the town administrator who was in receipt of this complete study back in May of 2011. On October 22nd, he did so by an email communication to the town administrator. On October 23rd, Mr. Soley received a response to his inquiry along with the completed traffic study report in 2011 in a PDF format from Jill Nascimento, one of the engineers working on the roundabout proposal. Since the town administrator working as a public safety director received the original completed traffic study report on or about May 5th, why does she have to pass the buck to the engineer from the state DOT when all she has to do is simply forward it to her herself? Some of you here tonight may not know this, but I began this fight regarding the speeding issue back in September of 2009. It has been an ongoing battle only to fall on deaf ears with a certain individual within the current administration. In fact, it was me who brought this matter to the attention to a currently seated town council member here tonight, who then brought it to the attention to the town administrator, public safety director. It was recommended by the town council member that she contact the state DOT to request that a traffic study be conducted of the area. For the record, all of this can be backed up with emails. On October 13, 2011, 10 a.m., the traffic study meeting took place at the State House. I was the only person who attended the traffic study hearing, along with the town administrator, public safety director, along with ex-Senator John Tassoni. When the meeting was nearing its completion, the chief traffic engineer, Mr. Robert Rocchio, asked the town administrator, public safety director, if there would be anything that she would like to add or say about this matter for the record. And this is what she said, and I quote, I will let the engineers do their job and agree with the results with what the engineers advise. Ex-Senator Sassoni looked at me and could not believe that she just sat there like a statue and did not back him or me up concerning lowering the speed limits. She did not represent the town like she should have done while acting in the capacity of the public safety director for the people of this town.
At all.
Mr. Falato, does this pertain to the roundabout itself?
It's my understanding that it has to do with Providence Pike.
So the
No, you're
traffic,
talking about a situation that happened, sorry, excuse me, Mr. President. You're talking about a situation that happened in a meeting 2 years ago, or 4 years ago, 2011, was it?
but this is a traffic issue though.
Right.
This is a
So,
traffic,
if it's
this is a traffic issue.
Yeah, but no, not Senator Tassani telling you they couldn't believe what Paulette said. That's not a traffic issue. If you have a concern with the speed limit on the road, I would think that this is a solution to it.
Mr. President,
It's a traffic issue on Providence Pike.
Yeah. Mr.
I'm
Flato,
sorry.
can you get to the traffic report itself,
Yes, I can.
please? Thank you.
All right, some of you people might not know, I know the neighbors do. Mr. Goodwin, I know he does, because I spoke to him last week. Out of 100 cars that were monitored, here are the results with a percentage rate of 85% of them being violators of excessive speed. 200 feet north of the Smithfield Elementary School driveway on Providence Pike, between 8:45 a.m. to 9:55 a.m., traveling southbound, 85% of the people are traveling 48 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour speed zone. That's 18 miles an hour over the posted speed limit, and this is a school zone of 30 miles an hour. Between 8:45 and 9:55 a.m., traveling northbound, 85% of the people are traveling 45 miles per hour in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. That's 15 miles an hour over the posted speed limit within a posted school zone of 30 miles an hour. Near 2010 Providence Pike, the midway point between the Smithfield Middle School and the elementary school, between 11:15 to 12 p.m. traveling southbound, 85% of the people are traveling 50 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour zone. That's 10 miles an hour over the posted speed limit. Between 11:15 a.m. to 12 p.m. traveling northbound, 85% of the people are traveling 48 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour zone. That's 8 miles an hour over the posted speed limit. 300 feet south of the middle school, between 2:15, school's just getting out, to 3 p.m. traveling southbound, 85% of the people are traveling 49 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour school zone. That's 19 miles per hour over the posted speed limit within the posted school zone. Between 2:15 and 3 p.m. traveling northbound, 85% of the people are traveling 46 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour school zone. The North Smithfield Police Department has been extremely supportive concerning my continued request and safety concerns into this matter. Back in 2011, I personally spoke to Chief Reynolds numerous times and exchanged emails concerning the speed limit issues. He assured me that he would look into this matter further. Chief Reynolds did, in fact, send a cruiser out to the Providence Pike area a couple of times to set up a message board, but that did not last too long. In fact, I had a cruiser parked in my driveway, Officer Jane Rainville, to try to slow the traffic down, but that did not work either. A few days later, Patrolman Gene Cabral was parked at the entrance to the athletic fields during the course of his daytime shift, but that only lasted 2 days, and that was it. Just to prove a point, I would invite anybody in this room to drive out to Providence Pike. Once you get to 1937 Providence Pike, set your cruise control to 40 miles an hour and see what happens. While doing the correct speed limit of 40 miles an hour, you will see that cars will be coming up on your tail, and they'll lay on your horns, and then the first chance that you're going to get, they're going to pass you on double yellow lines, no matter what. On Wednesday, November 18th, 2015, at 10:30 a.m., I went to the town clerk's office and submitted an access to public records request to view the plot plans in order to see the school property lot lines, to see for myself where the school property ended on Providence Pike. Before I proceed, let me ask you this. Does anyone, other than the gentleman and this young lady in back of me, know what's the law regarding the school safety zones? Well, let me tell you something. On November 13, 2015, I contacted the Governor's Office on Highway Safety and was informed that the state law states that the school safety zone limits are 300 feet before and after the school property line limits. I've got the traffic study, and once you read the traffic study thoroughly, you will see that the intersection also has something to do with this. This is why I bring all this up. Let me just inform